Thanks, Michael. Peter, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate being back, and it'd be fun to talk about some new updates since the last time I was on your show.
So you have a new, not new, but 10-year anniversary edition book, Knowledge Apocalypse. So after 10 years, what motivated you to bring this forward?
Again, I appreciate your queuing me up on the topic. So the book, uh, basically 10 years ago when I wrote the book, so 10 years ago, let's just say it was 10 years ago.
Around 10 years ago.
That sounds about right. The initial reason for writing the book was I had been given quite a bit of advice that at this point in my career, 10 years ago, I really am known as a speaker. I'm on TV, I do appearances at conferences, and that's what I enjoy doing. And the contribution of the research is to speak about it and present. Not so much write. That's not my first skill that I turn to communicate these topics. So having said that, I wrote the book initially because it was a gateway to do interviews. Good cue for anyone who wants to share an idea or something that they have a passion about, write a book. Because once you have that book, it opens doorways to be interviewed on the local news, radio show, what have you. And so that's the advice that was given to me, is also be an author, write a book. And so I wrote a book, not a long book, just enough to kind of be kind of like the cliff notes into ufology that you can hand someone so they could kind of be like, wow, some interesting stuff. So in the 10 years that I wrote that, I basically just wanted to expand on it, beef it up a little bit, talk about more current topics, some of the new areas in ufology that have come up, especially in my area of research. You mentioned Zecharia Sitchin. Respectfully, his research only went to a certain point. The research has continued on past his death. And there's been other avenues with technology and areas of research that I'm sure he would have loved to investigate. I'm just not sure he was completely aware of the data. So we can talk about some of that. And that's what I do, is I just kind of update everybody about what's been going on from my point of view. And we keep
Every
moving forward.
every time I see Zecharia Sitchin, I think of Zecharia Sitchin, I always think of you. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, because a lot of people know that you had a lot of you did work alongside with him a
I
little
did.
bit. Yeah.
Yep. I was friends with Zecharia Sitchin. Yep. He the way
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry, Michael. No,
Well,
please.
I was actually going to ask you, like, how many years did you work alongside him? Because I know you did a lot of work, but I wasn't sure maybe the details a little bit about that.
I'd say I probably had about 3 years where I worked closely with Zecharia. When I say closely, it just meant that when he had appearances or something that was coming up, I got to be involved. I got to be an invited guest, participating after the conference, usually in some small group in a dinner. So Zecharia Sitchin, um, he was a great influence on my research. And, it was an interesting time when he was alive, because what we're looking at is, I think he passed away in, I want to say 2009, something around that time. So back in that time, there's still the upcoming characters in these, in this field, was myself and Giorgio Tsoukalos. And see, the thing is I was more of an apprentice of Zecharia Sitchin, where Giorgio was more of an apprentice of Eric von Daniken. Things have changed. Obviously, Zecharia Sitchin's passed away. Eric von Daniken's much older. Giorgio has come into his own as the superstar of Ancient Aliens. So it was a really interesting time when Zecharia was alive, and I am very grateful to be associated with him, uphold his research. He's been really kicked down by the Christian prominent viewpoints that look at the biblical knowledge and look at his translations and say it's all wrong. There's no aliens. Everything he says is wrong, wrong. The problem with those people who are very biased in their own religious views, which is fine, there's only a couple of them, and anyone who listens to them can clearly see their viewpoint, which is fine too, even if they want to bash Zecharia Sitchin, which I think is ridiculous. But Zecharia Sitchin and Eric von Daniken brought an interesting mix to the table, and they still do, their principles, which are, Zecharia Sitchin was based in linguistics. He looked at the translations. He was raised in Hebrew, understood the Old Testament, and could translate Akkadian, Sumerian directly, Whether or not people agreed with his translations or how he wrote his books, I don't care. Point is he had that ability to do that. And so with Zecharia Sitchin's linguistics ability through the ancient astronaut lens, combined with Eric von Daniken's views of actual artifacts and locations, if you combine all the visual evidence and the linguistic evidence together, the view for the ancient astronaut story becomes very clear. And that's probably why Ancient Aliens is now in season 18, and literally every episode that airs, even if it's a rerun, has close to 1 million people watching. So go figure.
You have anything to say, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, Ancient Aliens is a good show. I mean, good content. And I mean, most TV is trash these days, but it's one of the few shows which makes you think.
It really does. They've done a good job. It's funny too, because in season 1, some of the first episodes, they did the traditional path of a ufology show or paranormal show that everyone had done up till then. The first Ancient Aliens had skeptics in it, meaning I would be like, hey, here's the Baghdad Battery. It's this ancient device found in Iraq.
That's right. You were the man behind the Baghdad Battery. I didn't mean to cut you off. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you was really I don't know all the story about that, but you was pretty much the face behind that. Yeah.
I was one of the faces. I did an on-camera experiment a couple times, Discovery Channel, Sci-Fi Channel. And for Ancient Aliens, I did an on-camera experiment with Giorgio and poured orange juice in it and got 4 volts off of orange juice that showed that, the properties of it having an asphalt stopper and a copper lining and this iron rod and any weak acidic acid between the combination of those elements generated positive electrons. So as soon as I did the experiment, they have a skeptic come on and go, you could do that to just electroplate gold. You're heating up the metal to spray it over a necklace or something, not make electricity. And that was the precipice of shows in the early days before Ancient Aliens, is if you appeared on a show, they were like, hey, we want to interview you and talk about aliens and UFOs or the past. They'd always interview you and then litter it with skeptics, where the person at the end of the show was like, what did I just see? I saw some stuff cool, but then they proved it wrong. I'm at a loss. Ancient Aliens finally turned that after about season 2 or 3, and no more skeptics. Like, could it be possible? We don't know, but what if? And there's Robert Clotworthy, the voice of Ancient Aliens. He's like, is it possible? So they've really done a good job, to Peter's point, because while they do push the alien topic, and some people are like, was it built by aliens or ancient man didn't have enough credit? But the content is good. It makes you go, what if,
I don't think it's necessarily just about everything they say may not be 100% factual. It's a lot of the content is there to make you think, and don't take the modern academia's word of what they believe of our ancient human origins are.
I think from a high level, that's exactly right, Michael. And one thing is interesting about Ancient Aliens is there has been somewhat of a change. There was a gentleman named Kevin Burns, who was the executive producer of the show, who passed away in 2019. And up till his time, every show that came out from associate producers, like, here's our new episode about Planet X, like 80% of that episode would be edited by Kevin Burns. No, don't talk about that. Talk about this first. Put this person in there. Have this. He was really, really hands-on, and you have to give him credit and look at the amount of seasons 1 through 12, essentially, were all done by Kevin Burns. And he just did an incredible job. And I see that the tone of the show now, while it's still awesome, but without Kevin Burns, I see that it's slightly deviating into different directions and expanding in its own way. But yeah, they've done a really good job with continuing to come out with new content every season. It's like, what are you going to talk about this season? Again, pyramids and artifacts, but somehow they literally find the producers, the associate producers. They hunt down and research and find new angles and things that as as someone in the field, we don't always have access to locate these things ourselves. So the show does a great job of actually finding a lot of things that weren't on the radar and bringing it to people's attention.
You got something, Peter?
Do you think Ancient Aliens is like a slow gateway to disclosure? Like it slowly fills people's minds up bit by bit, so that when the aliens do come, people won't be scared.
I'm going to answer that with a deeper response, Peter. Yes, but here's also what I would say is I've seen a climate on the show where, again, I'm not quite sure how to read into it, and maybe it's nothing. Michael, you'll enjoy this with your military background. Maybe you feel comfortable commenting on this just from a layman's perspective, not so much from, security clearance perspective. One of my colleagues is named Dr. Travis Taylor, and recently he was, come to find out, has a very deep background in the DoD and is connected to government-sponsored ufology research, where some of these organizations that have been recently become public, the public was also astounded to find out that Dr. Travis Taylor was the chief scientist in some of these actual DoD and various other government driven projects. At some level, he is actually the chief scientist. And so one starts to wonder about, wow, so he's also the lead character in Ancient Aliens and Skinwalker Ranch and publicly interested in paranormal, yet we find very much tied to DoD. Even John Greenwald had the Pentagon or some other agency of that stature confirm that, yes, Dr. Travis Taylor is in fact the chief scientist at X, Y, and Z. And everyone's like, what the, does that mean he's a government plant in Ancient Aliens? And that whatever cooperation AMC Networks is getting from the Department of Defense with Travis Taylor's involvement and show topics is, Peter, possibly helping disclosure? I don't know. Or is there something else there where, which I think is the angle, which here it is I work in technology and have for a very long time. My research is kind of like my night job. My day job is I'm in technology. And I've seen that in some of these companies that are doing classified research that are extremely top secret, reverse engineering alien code or alien materials. 20 years ago, they only hired security clearance people, with a military background. They did not tap into the civilian population. Today, if you drive in Palmdale, you'll see top secret companies saying, I know you've got a background. We'll give you a security clearance. Come work for us. Meaning the climate has changed in that people like Dr. Travis Taylor and others who have a lot of degrees and are interested in topics like this, those companies are bled the pool dry with military resources and are now going after the public to find physicians and technology experts and engineers who can start to also crack this problem. And who cares about the cover-up anymore? They're like, we need to get this crap done, is kind of what I feel. So, we're going into space soon with SpaceX in 2026. We're going to be on Mars. Go figure whether or not that's going to happen. The moon right after, or if not, sooner, if they can get the spacesuit thing figured out. So my point is there's a lot of stuff coming out which would essentially break the silence of disclosure. If a bunch of civilians are floating around in space and doing stuff, traveling here and there, the moon and Mars, you can't hide stuff. If all that STS footage for years and years has been showing objects being filmed, everyone's going to have a heyday filming that. What are they all going to sign a disclosure? I will not say shit about what I yeah, right. So I'm wondering what's going to happen in the next decade with all these advances in technological breakthroughs, with all these things you see as UAPs, underfunded opportunities, basically, is some of the things we hear.
Just a new buzzword.
Yeah, they're not aliens, in my opinion. It's just another, front of technology to say, give us funding. But I don't know what's coming next. There is something on the horizon.
So do you think they'll have a militarized space, or is it still just a dream?
I think they've had a militarized space for about 70 years. In my personal opinion, I've seen that there's been trillions of dollars, trillions that go into a budget that they're like, oh, we don't know where it's going. And if we did, we couldn't tell you anyways. Yeah, they've been building mega spaceships, platforms, because the Navy has been doing this for a very long time. The Navy doesn't build ships or planes, they build fleets. And now we have fleets in space. And there's been people who've hacked computers and such. Gary McKinnon, Google his name. And, you know, he's clearly seeing a list of non-terrestrial personnel and low resolution spaceships, you know, and they came after him like, you're not going to hack our computers ever again. And tried to extradite him. And it was extremely, you know, extremely difficult for him. So, you know, I don't know what to say. There's definitely something that's going on, and the military is the reason that's been, you know, kind of proliferating and using all this technology. But here's another angle I'll leave you with, Peter. I talk about the ancient gods, the Anunnaki, ancient Hindu gods, ancient Vimana that used to fly down. Every culture around the world talks about gods that came down from the sky. I do not want the ancient Aztec gods or Anunnaki or whoever to return today and have a bunch of big space guns pointing at them to welcome them back. That's not the welcoming card that I want to send. So the militarization of space that's been going on, I think, is hindering the overall acceptance for us into this galactic community. Because if they ever wanted to like stop us or hurt us, you know, they've shown extreme restraint, these extraterrestrials that are involved in our whatever we're doing here. They come here and they disable weapons, they monitor us, they do stuff. They never harm us though. And if they wanted to, it'd be like, bye. So they've shown extreme restraint. And I think hopefully all of this is towards, you know, the eventual, you know, change in ownership from the militarization of space to a new realm that, you know, dude, our weapons aren't going to do anything out there except for piss other species off. So that's my opinion.
I agree. Peter had to leave just for a second, but he'll be back. So, and you broke that down really good. I don't want to keep on with that military clearance, but before I ask you this next question, Jason, I was in between. I signed up in 05, and then I got out in 2012. My full I guess commitment was till 2013. But I remember even when I first got in, I was military police, and they were saying that there will be here in a few years, there will be no more military police patrolling bases. It will be all outside contractors. And then when
Whack and Hut.
Yep.
And whatever.
Yep. And then that was just a doorway with a lot of them getting these clearances, because I believe just military police, you automatically get, I think it's just a top secret clearance for things that you may see. But right. But I was watching a video on, I believe it was your YouTube channel. You was talking about let me see, I believe it was the cycles of time. Yep. The lost cycle of time. So I guess before I ask you what I was wanting to ask you, explain in a Cliff Notes version. I know it's probably hard, Jason, but just if anybody wants to watch that video, I'll put it in the description. You can get more detail, but give me a Cliff Notes version of the lost cycle of time, and I'll go on from there, Jason.
That's a very advanced topic. I'd say this is the piece that would bridge Zecharia Sitchin's research into today, and he's just not aware of this. There's the video you can watch. My partner, my business partner, Walter Cruttenden, he's actually the champion of this topic, and I've really learned a lot from him. He did a video that's a mastermind video. He actually hired Darth Vader, not joking. James Earl Jones narrates the video. It's called A Great Year. It's also on YouTube. Please start with that before my humble lost cycle of time.
It's deep. It's deep.
Well, the topic is basically this. I mean, it's deep because here's the beginning point, and then I'll spread out the topic. Current science today is looking at something called precession, where they seem that there's like a wobble happening around the Earth every 2,000 years. our direction of what North Star we're pointing to changes. And so they've been measuring this effect to say, what's causing this? We don't understand it. So they call it precession. And there's this calculation of about 2,000 variables from torque and motion and the planets and something to do with our moon, where they say precession is this very advanced mathematical calculation. And it turns out it's not. They're looking at the solar system to say, here's the sun, and we're all spinning around it. And every 24,000 years, or every 2,000 years, I should say, you have a new North Star. And so somehow they're trying to figure out the stuff moving around us and giving an answer. There were over 30 ancient cultures that were also aware of this cycle, precession. It's a 24,000 year cycle. So it kind of dumbfounds a lot of scientists and astronomers as to how the ancients knew about this. But the basic answer is this. Today, they say, oh, well, the solar system isn't moving. When we think about the solar system in our mind, you just see the sun and the planets moving. It turns out that most all other solar systems today we film or image are binary. They have two suns, not just one, meaning the suns are orbiting each other, or sometimes two or three suns in this intricate dance. But let's just go with a binary star system. That means that the two suns are in orbit. Any little planets around those suns, hey, they're going along for the ride in this dance. We are a binary solar system. Most of that evidence should come out within the next 10 years that we are a moving solar system. We are, in fact, probably orbiting Sirius A and B in this very long dance that, of course, takes thousands of years for us to observe. And so it's not easy to confirm. But if you think about it from that standpoint, if our sun is orbiting another star system, that means that us, Mars, Jupiter, all the planets are moving through space. And that is changing our perspective to what we see. And that's what's causing precession. So that's even the simplest answer sounds complicated, but today we're looking at precession, and it's a non-moving model. Over 30 ancient cultures recognized precession as a binary model and actually tracked a cycle of time that you've all heard these terms, the Dark Ages, the Golden Age. It's not a linear track. The Dark Ages were back then and we're headed towards the Golden Age. Nope. Just like the movie trailer. Nope. Basically, it's a cyclical time. The lost cycle of time basically shows you that the farther back we go in time right now, if you go back to the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and you go back to the Egyptians' first dynastic pyramids, and some of those pharaohs, we see that the architecture, the farther back we go, Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 BC. The further back we go, the better and more articulate the structures get, because we are in a cycle where we go into the Dark Ages, forget everything, and then go into a Golden Age where we have an enlightened experience where ancient Vedic texts tell us that we reach a point of enlightenment where we're actually able to interpret God. Not anywhere near that now, but again, this is a 12,000 year cycle of ascending into a Golden Age, 12,000 years, and then descending into a Dark Age, another 12,000 years, a 24,000 year cycle. And so many, many ancient cultures track this. And I think that, Michael, with my long-winded answer, is what's really been my precipice of focus on the ancient topic, is understanding this cycle and how it affects us, because there's some subtlety there, which I'll tell you more about, that really does lay a foundation for our future.
And and I totally agree. When I was watching that video, Jason, and that was a very quick actually answer from Jason Martell, because if you watch that video and some of his other interviews, he talks about it too. And like I said, I'll try to remember to put a lot of things in the description so you can check a lot of these links out. But something that has always fascinated me, Jason, is that I believe that we go through these cycles just like you talk about, but I don't understand. And we go through these ups and downs,
Yep.
But how does that affect us on a conscious level? because it seemed like it affects everything. I just don't understand that. And I may be asking you to speculate some, Jason. Just give me what y- your research and your gut tells you right now.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Thank you. Here's how I would answer it. If you think about the energy from one sun, what happens when there's two? So if you think about on a bright sunny day, how good it feels to be outside, be alive. If you think about the changes of the seasons even, right? So when it's summertime, all of the plants are in bloom, everything leans towards the sun when it's out. When it's dark, everything closes and goes away. So there's something about the sun's energy that makes us active and wants to do want to do things. If you could imagine perhaps the influence of another sun, Sirius A and B, if that sun's energy is a bright blue color, if it was very close to us at some point where we're getting a yellow sun and a blue sun, maybe speculating to your point, maybe there's some influence that happens in the golden age where these two suns escalate our level of being and somehow allow us to evolve quicker, communicate, use our mind. All the ancient texts show us that we reach this age of technological understanding, spiritual understanding that we just can't even grasp now, and then we lose it again. So to me, it also brings to mind that if you think about all these advanced alien races that are watching us, time again is a different perspective, where they're probably watching us going, wow, they're not in the golden age just quite yet. Let's give them some time until they're the human beings that we actually want to interact with. Because right now they're just running around the mud and destroying natural resources. They need some time still. And that's exactly the case. I think there's something that happens over time where our evolutionary process, when exposed to the energy of these two suns, is expanded. And possibly as we go towards the dark ages, all of these megalithic monuments like the Giza pyramids and various other sites that are geodetically connected, we know they were sharing some type of a subtle energy. We don't understand what it was. The pyramid, obviously, it's not a tomb, generating some type of massive energy and sharing it across the globe, perhaps. I theorize that it was taking this natural effect of a higher consciousness and generating it in an artificial way or recreating it to keep it around as long as they could before it was fully dissipated. And they'd have to wait again for it to come back around and us to recreate and understand again.
What if, well said, Jason. I'll try to go off a little bit on that. And you kind of brought something, and I kind of discussed it a little bit on some of my podcast. But what if we're, like you said, we're going through space, right? Through the solar system and I guess through the universe. Well, there's this energy. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not as smart as my brain, like you put it, you elaborate it very well, and other researchers too. But there's this energy out there. That's just floating. We can't explain it. You know what I mean? So let's say we hit these pockets of energy, and then we hit one that's like a golden age. We're like, we're smarter, more intelligent. Everything's just clicking,
Mm-hmm.
And that could be like a drug, right? And then, so we're floating, whatever. And then we're getting out of that pocket of energy. And then we come into this darker form of energy. And then since we're used to having that bliss, that like that drug that gave us all this intelligence and all that, and now we're coming off that drug, we're hitting rock bottom, and then we start doing all this crazy shit, fear, everything else, just violence. We lose some of our conscious abilities through technology, everything. Well, what do you think about that, Jason?
I think what you're saying is a different, it's the same thing, but using a different analogy, like a
Right.
dark energy
Yeah.
versus a positive energy. I think the energies that are caused from whatever is causing them in this, cycle of motion, I'm almost positive it's the sun's, but it could just be like that too. It could be going through some energy field that changes, our makeup. We really don't know. The visual that comes to my mind when you say that is Star Trek Generations. There's a movie where they actually find this band of energy, and he kind of like shoots a rocket to change its trajectory so we can jump into this band of energy. And then in there, it's like bliss, and he
The
never wants to
Nexus.
leave.
Yeah,
I believe it was Generations.
it was Generations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so hitting it right on the head. It was literally this foreign space energy that was like bliss energy. And they all wanted to, you know, if you knew about it, you just wanted to be in that bliss energy because you could do anything you want and over, you know, recorrect the errors of your past. So I think that's an interesting concept. And who knows, it could be that there are some energy fields or something along the orbit or how we transition in this binary orbit that affect us. You know, only time will tell. Here's another quick analogy I can give you as far as the timetable for when we talk about precession and the lost cycle of time. You know, there's a little insect today called the mayfly, and it only lives 12 hours. Its whole life cycle is 12 hours. So let's say a mayfly is born in the morning on a cloudy day, and a few hours later, another mayfly, you know, and it's like, you know, I've heard of this stuff called wind and sunshine, but I don't see it. And they both die that day. That's their life cycle, never seeing wind or experiencing sunshine. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? So what happens is we're in a 24,000 year cycle, and our lifespan of 100 years is not able to comprehend 24,000 years. But it turns out that in this cycle, there is a cosmic effect, Michael, to your point, that is affecting us. And so here's how I can answer that with actual evidence. There's 3 changes that we can observe that are all from cosmological changes. Cycle 1, the Earth spinning on its axis, causes day and night. We're not really thinking about it, but because the Earth is spinning on its axis, we have day and night. When nighttime comes, boop, everybody goes into a subconscious state. You're out. You don't even have a choice. You're going to sleep. Everyone, all the animals too. That's effect number 1. Cycle number 2, the Earth is going around the sun. And that effect causes globally seasons to change, animals to migrate. Like all of it's literally affecting the Earth. Effect number 3 is precession. This 24,000 year cycle, over 30 ancient cultures say it affects us in a way that we're trying to track, because we go into a dark age and then back into a golden age, and it's a cycle to understand where we are in that process. Like a cosmic clock, they divided the heavens into 12 parts, the 12 houses of the zodiac, and watched what North Star is our current North Star, just like we left the age of Pisces, and now we're in the age of Aquarius ever since 2012, pretty much when the Mayans predicted the end of an age. Everyone's like, it's the end of time. No, it's like the clock hitting noon. It's just a new hour. It's a new epoch of time that the Mayans were also very, very aware of. So that, I think, is just a very interesting topic for us to understand, that there are cosmic things happening that can affect our consciousness. It happens every day, but there are larger ones which we're trying to comprehend and understand.
Yeah, something, Peter?
Yeah. Have you heard the theory that this solar system was engineered? And do you think that might be possible?
I hadn't really considered that. I feel like there could be objects in the solar system that were engineered, like our moon. Don't really know if it's hollow or what its deal is. It's not made of anything else in our solar system, it seems. It's probably brought here. I don't really know how I could answer that, other than to say at the underlying view of when I look out my window at the leaves and the different plants, I see symmetry in nature defined mathematically that is so precise, which I'm sure extends off the planet. And that, I think, is the voice of the universe talking. That understanding that math has a pattern and it's a repeatable, measurable thing. There's probably other systems in place with our solar system that would make one scratch their head to say, someone designed this. Who that person was, again, I'm going to go to a movie reference. One of the latest movies of Marvel was called Eternals. And it literally shows these beings like being birthed inside of the core of like Earth. Bummer for us when it blows up as this new being is emerged. And its purpose is to create other solar systems and planets. Pretty heavy topic.
And they're kind of like angels or watchers or
right.
Yeah.
Archons.
Yeah. So, I just wonder sometimes about, our visual references in movies, again, towards disclosure and understanding, but also, in our generation today, there's nothing on the table that's not already been made by Marvel or DC Comics that I can't give you some reference to. And the kids today will be like, oh, it's another dude from a different dimension. It's not an alien or a demon or an angel. It's no longer these simplified topics that we grew up with and people might still be trying to hang on to. It's a more advanced understanding that there's a lot going on, folks. We're living in the third dimension on a planet that's a third rock from the sun, and we're still trying to figure stuff out, And
So
the dinosaurs did exist.
yeah. You got something else, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, really, we don't even know our true history because everything's distorted. I mean, if we had a time machine, it would be a lot easier to know, but it's mostly guesswork and theories, isn't it?
Boy, place your bets if you have a time machine. That'd be so much fun. What
Or
really happened?
or Jason, what about I want to go a little bit possibly maybe with some of this maybe ancient advanced, maybe possibly technologies. We already mentioned the Baghdad Battery and some other ones, but do you think that, I guess before 9/11, we had this intel about possibly there being an ancient Stargate in Iraq? Do you think that's possibly one of the primary invasions why we possibly went into Iraq? And if not, have you looked into possibly ancient Stargates? Is it like SG1, Stargate SG1, or is it something else? Maybe these portals, or have you looked into this theory, Jason?
Yeah, there's a three-part question there. I'll try to answer. There's massive evidence of deep underground military bases, DUMBs, and a lot of these locations are located or have exits in extremely public places. Downtown LA might have the lower floor, like just one door, and you're like in a portal that takes you into a Stargate. I've heard everything like that. That yes, there's all kinds of dimensional gateways that we use to our leisure at discretion, obviously top secret, to get around on planet and off planet. So I do believe that those exist. I got lost in the other parts of what I was going to answer. What was the first part of your question, so I can maybe remember?
Did with these ancient I've heard a lot of theories about that the ancient ones, whatever, they had these Stargates, and that's one of the reasons why we went into Iraq.
Iraq. Thank you. So the Stargate, separate from Iraq, I'd say again, there's technology technology pops up that describes that we've been able to use dimensional gateways to our own benefit rather than just discovering them. Iraq, I do believe that in 2003 and then the subsequent invasion, there was weapons of mass destruction as the top level answer. But it turns out that most likely Saddam did have some access to extraterrestrial technology of some kind that our side was like, we can't have him deploy this or use it on a world stage. He's done. We're going to go get it. And before the invasion, there were more than one military personnel stationed in Iraq, actually afterwards too, that were in his palaces right after they'd been seized. And I had snapshots being sent to me of Saddam, beautiful artwork spanning hundreds of feet on some of these walls, where he's basically creating like an Anunnaki theme park, all these rides in Anunnaki, and Saddam prominently stated scenes where there's Anunnaki beautifully intricate scenes, and Saddam like standing, with them, right? So it's like he was trying to position himself with the gods. And a lot of that artwork, I have to understand that it wasn't just, beautiful imagery. He was doing that because maybe he had some underlying mission or premise that he wanted to keep those thoughts, like a mood board, prominently visual to him to, uplift his spirit of what he was trying to stand for, which we would not allow for him to stand for, and quickly shut that down.
There was, when we were talking earlier about the clearances and I think maybe whistleblowers and these TV shows and movies coming forward, and but with Stargate SG1, something that has always baffled me. I was a huge fan and still a huge fan of Stargate SG1, but at the end credits, Jason, after each episode, they say, let me see if I have it on here, that
Colorado Springs.
yeah, well, it says, we gratefully acknowledge the cooperation of the Department of Defense, Department of the Air Force, and U.S. Space Command. Like, wow. And then you're going to have people out there that say they were just helping them with their uniforms, and they were just helping them with their military grammar, no, come on. Maybe some, yes, I'm sure. But maybe that has something to do with maybe soft disclosure and things like that. What do you think about that, Jason?
I'd say Sci-Fi Channel's read in, and whatever
100%. Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, it's somewhat good and somewhat not good. And here's the not good part. I had a colleague named Dr. Roger Leir, who was well known for removing implants from people who had claimed to have had abduction experiences. He had like 11 different objects removed, and clean room surgeries, and these little things would either be like giving off frequencies or would literally move through the body when you tried to take them out. They did some trippy shit. And we had a piece of what was supposedly part of the Roswell spacecraft. Dr. Leir, and through some people we knew, gave a little chunk of debris that we had tested with New Mexico Tech, double blind tested. Anybody can Google what that means. Double blind tested with New Mexico Tech, Los Alamos National Laboratories, and San Diego University. 3 different departments, all confirming double blind that it was a non-terrestrial piece. There was no terrestrial contaminants, which means the thing was completely extraterrestrial. It came out of somebody. Now, that means if you were in the space shuttle and tried to assemble it and make something, you would still have terrestrial contaminants from your gloves or the instruments. No terrestrial contaminants in this device, in this thing. One part of it even showed it had a machine surface. Point is, we cut off a small piece and gave it to the Sci-Fi Channel to do a show. It was a triangular shape that we gave them. And on the show, they basically tested it. It was a square now, not a triangle. And we're like, oh, it's just a piece of silicone. Nothing here. And fucking like, that was it. And I remember being at dinner with my friend Chris Wyatt and Dr. Roger Leir, and the producer of the Sci-Fi Channel called back, and Dr. Leir's like, why? What are you guys doing? That's not even the piece that we gave you. And basically the tone was like, don't ever call us again. We don't ever want to speak to you again, to Dr. Leir. And I remember him hanging up the phone and us looking at each other, just going like, what just happened? Now, aside from that, we had also had some weird stuff happening. I mean, we tried to do a live webcast through Coast to Coast AM. George Norrie and a bunch of others were put on retainer to release the information about this object at a live webcast. The day of the event, our servers, all the files, like FTP folders with files, they were gone. And we had 3 different personnel that were going to appear on the show. One of them was a Dr. Vernon Clark, I think his name was Dr. Vernon Clark, from San Diego University. He became a janitor, no longer a scientist. He was a janitor. Like, it was just weird. Like, weird stuff happened around trying to, test this. And so the Sci-Fi Channel's involvement in how they handled the material we gave them, swapping it to a different something just very basic, made my eyebrows raise like, wow, what is going on? And that was in like, again, like 2008.
Was it 5? Yeah, yes. I knew it was like
Long
something
time
like
ago.
that. Well,
Long
what
time.
does your gut tell you though, Jason? Like, so are they really read in? Is it the Sci-Fi Channel? Are there people out there? I don't know who they are. It could be Men in Black, and they attack people that maybe they're too close. They're too close to the truth, and they have their pawns in the game. Maybe these doctors or Sci-Fi Channel or whoever, and maybe I always like to say, if you get too close to the truth, you're going to be Phil Schneidered or Bill Coopered, you know.
That sucks. Yeah, but I hear your point. And there was a Netflix special. I forgot the guy's name, but he came out and there's a special about him where he's basically saying that, there's people like me that have been paid by the Air Force, by the military, to basically work with ufologists and give them just false information. Oh yeah, I'm a Air Force personnel, and that thing you thought was a UFO, man, we really don't know what that was. We'd like you to keep your eye on that and keep us informed. When in fact, it's not a UFO. They're running classified military tests. And so, who are the UFOs to divert attention or draw back any actual knowledge of this military project? Happened over and over and over and over and over. Bob Lazar and many others experienced it. So I don't ever have any personal interest to go spy on military bases or like, let's get a view of the secret technology. When it's not going to be secret, it'll come out. I do think there are other ways to pursue these topics through actual contact. Dr. Stephen Greer and others who have tried these methods. Not that I've tried them myself and have faith, but I think they're interesting and should be explored more.
They'll just say it's a weather balloon and nobody will think anything of it after that.
Exactly. And just these latest things we have with ATIP and various other organizations popping up with weird 5-letter, 7-letter, variable words. There's been this pattern with Project Blue Book, Project Grudge. Many different times they come out with these task force that are going to look into the topic and never come up with anything, never tell the public anything. And so this latest round of like UAPs, trying to rename UFOs to UAPs are
Kind of pisses me off.
Yeah, it's military projects. And they're basically just saying, oh no, we need more money so that we can make drones like this. Now the Tic Tac and being able to read the mind of the pilots and do some things like that. Again, there are technologies that we are using on the planet Earth, built by us, that are so far out there, they'd probably seem like magic or extraterrestrial. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's just another push, the UAPs, of 9/11, other things, bombings, this, that, where they're like, fear, give us the money to help squash the fear. I don't want that fear. I don't want to keep fueling that big gun in space mentality, because I just don't think it's the right approach. I'm all for, safety, if you will.
I don't trust them though, Jason.
Don't trust
And
them.
and it's weird how you kind of bring that up, because me and Peter, we trying to bring him on board, kind of warming him up to this, because he really does have a great mind. But we had a little podcast, just me and him, just shooting the shit. And I don't trust what's going on now, Jason, because these same people behind the scenes, possibly behind 9/11, JFK, these same rogue elements, man, these same rogue elements. Okay. I was part of the military or part of the government. I wasn't on the deep inside. You have good people in the government. You do. But it's so departmentalized, and all it takes is just a few bad apples that are orchestrating these things behind the scenes. And not to sound too conspiratorial, but it's true. these same people, these same elements in the government, why are we trusting what's going on right now whenever these same people are possibly behind 9/11, JFK? That's just to name a few, Jason. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but hopefully I'm wrong and something good comes out of all this. But then again, if something comes good to our perception that we think is good, should we actually trust it? You know what I mean?
I hear you, Michael, and I think I'd end my comments, in an interview today with the thought that if disclosure is coming of any kind, and let's say all of a sudden there's an Independence Day style event where you wake up and there's flying saucers or spaceships everywhere in the news, you can see them. It's not an invasion. It's another planned scenario to orchestrate fear. So if that happens, I would be like, oh my God, here we go again. Because if there's ever some type of like actual encounter, it's never going to be how we would play it out. It's going to be something literally extraterrestrial. So we'll just have to see what unfolds over time.
And I really want to have you come back, and I want to discuss a little more. Maybe next time we do an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. But I think I told you at first an hour and a half, but then I had to cut it down to 60 minutes because some things going on this evening. But man, because I really want to get into Mars.
Let's do it.
Wow,
sure.
Man, the connections with here and Earth, and you're one of the ones that did that connection. You and others too, back in the day. And I'm sure there's a lot more information with that. But Jason, man, I really appreciate it. I'm sure Peter enjoyed it. This is his first time actually doing an interview instead of me and him just chatting.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fascinating.
Well, it's my pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
All right, Jason. We will, and I'll definitely keep in touch. And man, I salute you again, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.